deposit, and I mean, there were limits on the old notes, the dates. Here's a situation that can only happen in rural India. On the border of Maharashtra and Karnataka live lakhs of extremely marginalized people, Banjaras and Dalits, who are, their main earning in the year is when they go to Maharashtra for cutting sugarcane. So, and they go around October, September, October, as the crop starts coming in the second run, they are there to cut sugarcane. Now these families, the Banjaras, the Dalits, they are, an average family is about 20 members. They're clans really, okay? So an average family is about 20 members. Now, the maximum amount they can earn in the year is in that sugarcane cutting season. It's extremely difficult and tedious a job, demanding, sitting down and cutting sugarcane. So you can earn up to 500 rupees a day, which is the maximum they will earn on any day in that year. And remember, there's 20 of them working, sometimes more than 20. So consider this situation. The farmers pay these laborers in the old notes which they have. Now these guys have worked 60 days at cutting on different farms. They've never been inside a bank in their lives. Suddenly they're compelled to go and deposit their money in the bank. Now imagine the situation when a extremely poor looking Adivasi, a Banjara or a Dalit, wearing maybe a torn dhoti or just knickers and no shirt, lands up and places 4 lakhs of rupees on the teller's counter. Okay? Teller immediately thinks that this cannot be this man's money. It is. It's his entire family's money. They work for 60 days at 500 rupees per person per day. Right? And what they have, first time they're even depositing a thing in the bank because they're compelled to, since the 500 rupee has been removed from the currency. At one stroke, 86% of the currency was removed from circulation or made illegal. So there's the guy with 3-4 lakhs of rupees and the whole bank staring at the poor fellow, thinking that he's either a thief, a bandit, or some big landlord is sending money through him. He doesn't know what the hell is happening. The teller calls the bank manager, who tips off the police and the income tax department, who then land up there to question and query a completely terrified Banjara, who's trying to explain that this is our money. We earned this money. You can come to the fields and speak to the farmers. They gave us this money. This is what we live on. We were told you have to put it in a bank or you can't use it because it's in these notes. That was one of 1,000 such situations that came up. Another thing that happened in Osmanabad itself, and I realized that there are people here from Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. In Telangana, it destroyed the midday meal. Children went hungry for 2 months. Why? Because rice, wheat, you buy on contract. But vegetables you buy on cash. Vegetables are what you buy that day. Right? You don't have storage facilities and refrigeration facilities in primary and elementary schools where there are no refrigerators and there's no bloody electricity. You buy vegetables every day. Now that woman who is selling you the vegetables, how much credit can she give? So for 2-3 months, the children of Telangana, Marathwada ate midday meals which was just watered down dal. Not a trace of vegetable. No eggs, not even chili, nothing, just watered down, watery dal with whatever rice there was, and that was another. So you had this kind of impact, but the kind of impact that it had on farmers. Nashik, all of you know, Nashik is one of India's greatest horticultural districts. I don't know if many of you know of this, but every fourth tomato in India comes from Nashik. Every fourth tomato comes from Nashik. In the last few years, in the last 20 odd years, maybe now 25, successive governments have pushed farmers, including subsistence farmers, to switch from food crop cultivation to cash crop cultivation. There's a gigantic difference in the two worlds of food crop and cash crop. Cash crop is more remunerative, far more remunerative, and incredibly far more risky. The cost, say, suppose you can cultivate an acre of paddy for 10,000 rupees, say in Wayanad, Kerala, 1 acre. If you switched to cultivating vanilla, the cost would be 1,50,000 per acre. So that is the factor difference in just the cost alone. And you're taking a subsistence farmer who needs that food crop for his family's food security and putting him into a high-end debt game, high-end risk game, where 1 or 2 seasons may have great profits, and the third season he goes bankrupt and he can't repay the debt. So here's a fact for you. 4/5 of all farmers' suicides in India, 4/5, there have been, by the way, since 1995, according to the National Crime Records Bureau, the number of farmers committing suicide in the country is 310,000, 20 years. That is a huge underestimate, as I will explain to you if you are interested in how governments play with statistics. But it's a huge underestimate. However, it's a horrible number in itself. And if you take the period between 2001, 2011, or 98 and 2007, it means the suicides were occurring at the rate of 1 every 32 minutes, 1 every half hour. Anyway, if of these 310,000 suicides, 4/5, nearly 4/5 are cash crop farmers. Very few food crop farmers take their lives. Ultimately, you may have a bad price for food crop, you may have a low price, but you have an assured minimum support price, which most farmers cannot access, but it's there. Ultimately, you can eat your food crop. You can't eat your cotton. Okay? So the rate of suicides is far higher, far greater amidst cash crop farmers. The risks are far greater, and if something goes wrong, you can't pull yourself out of it. You can't. You just don't have that capacity to repay. You're a subsistence farmer who's moved into cash crop. So that's a very big problem. So cash crop farmers are far more at risk. That is, by cash crop, I mean sugarcane, vanilla, rubber, tea, coffee, pepper, cotton, these sort of things. Incidentally, cash crop prices at the global level, cash crop prices on agricultural commodities in the cash crop are determined by a handful of corporations. An excellent example is coffee. 4 corporations control the world of coffee. Not one of them is a coffee producer. Nestle's, Starbucks, Sara Lee, Kraft, and they keep merging and demerging, so different names and entities. But 4 guys control the price of coffee. Now, who grows coffee? You don't grow coffee or pepper in Alaska. You don't grow it anywhere in the United States except pockets of California, where there are some, who sort of grow it on a very small scale, boutique coffees or whatever. and nowhere in Europe. Coffee is produced entirely in the third world, entirely in the poor countries. Yet, the total turnover on the coffee trade worldwide, less than 8 to 10% goes back to the producer countries. Less than 8 to 10% goes back to the producer countries. It's lower today than it was in 1991. In 1991, when the world turnover was around $6 billion, still, before 91, up to 20% of that turnover went back to the producer countries. Remember, again in the producer countries, there is a trader chain before the actual producer gets something out of it. But today, corporations from 4 or 5 countries account for over 90% of the turnover on a crop they never produced. So where the heck is the original producer in all this? Never mind the traders. So that's part of your crisis. That's part of it. Now it's very important to understand, why do we use the word agrarian crisis? It's not the same thing as an agriculture crisis. There is a big difference between an agrarian crisis is something much larger than just a crisis of farming or agriculture. It's something much larger than that. In an agrarian crisis, every sector of agrarian society is affected, not just farmers. Farmers may be the worst affected, but weavers, potters, spinners, tailors, all of them, bamboo workers, forest produce people, all are affected by an agrarian crisis. Meaning, every sector of agrarian society is damaged when you have what you call an agrarian crisis. And that's the first thing I'd like to tell you. The second thing is that the crisis that farming is seeing has to be viewed as part of that larger crisis. Third, the agrarian crisis is not only about farm suicides. It's not about the farm suicides. The farm suicides are the outcome of the crisis, not its origin. They are the culmination or the fallout of that crisis. They are not its cause. They are its consequence, not its cause. They are its outcome, not its origin. If I have, and so that there is no ambiguity, let me put that agrarian crisis in 5 words. It is the onslaught of corporate, or you can put it this way, the corporate takeover of agriculture. Farming is moving from families and communities to corporate control. So the corporate takeover of agriculture is your agrarian crisis in 5 words. What is the what is the consequence of this? It is the largest displacement in history. Without firing a gun or a shot, you're throwing millions of farmers off the land. Between the 1990, if you look at the 1991 census of India and the 2011 census of India, there are various categories of farmers, full status farmers. You know how a farmer is defined in the census? Somebody operating a piece of land, a plot of land, not necessarily the owner, but operating a plot of land for at least 180 days. Why is that definition there? It's a fair definition. It means that you ought to have been working at least 180 days operating a plot for you to qualify as what the census calls a cultivator main worker. If you work less than 6 months, 3 months, 4 months, you will be called cultivator marginal. You're a marginal cultivator that is against a main cultivator. The reason it's important to have some kind of a definition is, if we say anyone who cultivates for 3 days is a farmer, then every corporate executive tending to his grape or vineyard on the weekend becomes a farmer. When you say 6 months, 180 days, you are ensuring that this person's, the bulk of his or her livelihood comes from the art of agriculture. So that is the main cultivator I'm talking about. Between the 91 census and the 2011 census, their numbers have declined by 15 million. Yeah, it declined by 7.2 million between 1991 and 2001 census. Between 2001 and 2011 census, it declined by a further 7.7 million. You can see that the trend is intensifying. First 10 years of the reforms period, the dropout is 7.2 million. Second 10 years, 7.7 million. 15 million people across 20 years. Do the math. It means on average, you're losing full status farmers at the rate of over 2,000 per day. Do the math. 15 million, 20 years. Right? It comes to something like, if I'm not mistaken, 2,038 per day. Something like that, 2,040 per day. Now, where do these farmers go? If you look at the census, the basic document of the census on these issues is called the Primary Census Abstract. You can pull it off the net. You can look at it on the Census of India's website. 15 million farmers have gone. Do you know how big the fall was in unified Andhra Pradesh? In Andhra Pradesh, the number of farmers, that is Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, because in 2011 they were one state, the number of full status farmers, main cultivators, declined by 1.3 million. 1.3 million in 10 years. And you can see where many of them went in the next, a couple of columns down to the side. As farmers declined by 1.3 million, agricultural laborers, landless workers, that goes up by 3.4 million. Now it's not that every farmer went there. It means that many people from other professions and occupations also went there. But it means that millions of farmers in your country have fallen into the ranks of the agrarian underclass, agricultural labor. A lot of others working who are dependent on farming, who are dependent on agriculture, have also joined those ranks. So the number of farmers falling in Andhra, 1.3 million. Number of agricultural laborers in Andhra rises 3.4 million. It's a huge increase. It shows people being thrown into the ranks of the most vulnerable class of Indian society. Okay? That itself tells us the onslaught on agriculture, the onslaught on farming. How many of you are from Andhra Pradesh, by the way? Okay. Let me tell you one thing. Some of you probably have relatives who are in farming. In the 60s and 70s, all the old farmers will tell you this. A father trying to get his daughter married, given a choice between a doctor, an engineer, and a 20-acre, paddy acre landed farmer, always chose the son of the farmer over and above a doctor or an engineer. Today, no farmer wants a farmer in the family. They are running after those doctors and engineers because the status of the farmer has plummeted with the collapse of farming, of family farming. So you're seeing smallholders, family farmers struggling for survival. That is a very major phenomenon of your crisis.
Yeah,
Third,
in our own village, my distant cousin, he's not married because he's a farmer. Yeah.
He
couldn't get a girl.
That's right. The government of Maharashtra did a survey of the 6 worst districts of Vidarbha. Yavatmal, Vashim, Buldana, Nagpur rural, Akola and Amravati. Do you know what the figures showed? They didn't do a sample survey. They did a survey of 1.8 million farming households, 18 lakh households. They found 3.6 lakh families had unmarried girls whom they were unable to marry. It doesn't mean 3.6 lakh girls. 3.6 lakh families might have 5 lakh girls. And inability to get the daughter married has been a stress factor in the suicides. It's been a stress factor in 2 kinds of suicides. One, the father commits suicide because he's unable to get the daughters married. 2, that daughter commits suicide 6 months later because she blames herself wrongly. She blames herself for the suicide of her father. And even if she doesn't blame herself, there's an entire village to make her think that you are to blame. Right? There's an entire village to give that girl looks and say, Chodande, her father committed suicide because he was unable to get. So that pressure on that girl is also incredible. I have been to several households where a few months later, that oldest daughter has taken her life, thinking she is to blame for her father's suicide. There are girls who have committed suicide where their parents are still alive because they feel there's such a burden on their parents. 3 girls in Tamil Nadu killed themselves, leaving a letter saying, we cannot bear watching our father in this situation. Maybe in another life we will be born to you as sons. It's also that the social norms and mores of our society, which are so anti-women, so gender prejudiced, that also have a role in this, in what is happening here with this. Yeah. So that's another factor. As I said, the agrarian crisis in 5 words is the corporate takeover of agriculture. 2, what is the process by which this is achieved? You can sum it up again in 5 words. Predatory commercialization of the countryside. Millions of transactions in India were non-commercial. Exchange of seed between farmers, exchange of crop between farmers. Thousands and thousands of little transactions that take place in the countryside are, or even those which are commercial, are non-financial, like carpenters. Every village, whether in Andhra Pradesh or Tamil Nadu or somewhere, will have 2 families who are carpenters, mistris. They are from the carpenter caste. In Telangana, I went to the house of Bangaru Ramachandra in Nalagonda. When farmers go bankrupt, carpenters starve. Why is that? Because if I am the carpenter and you are the farmers of the village, my work is entirely dependent on you. Now, if you go bankrupt, you do not order a new bullock cart. You do not order a new plow. You do not order new tools. You do not even submit your old tools for retooling. What is the nature of my relationship with you? When I make something for you, you don't pay me in cash. You give me 25 to 30% cash, and the rest you give me in kind. So many kilograms of rice, so many kilograms of tomato, so many kg of vegetable from different farmers in the village. I get that, and I as a carpenter survive on that. Now when all of you are bankrupt, you're not going to give me any orders. When farmers go bankrupt, farmers commit suicide, carpenters starve to death. There were a large number of such deaths reported. I went to the houses of about 7 or 8. Bangaru Ramachandra was the famous case from Nalagonda, which was documented byEenadu's M.L. Narasimha Reddy and myself together, where the man had simply starved because the village agriculture had stopped. It's not just carpenters, weavers. Do you know that everyone knows that Anantapur was the first district to become famous for suicide?
Yes.
But not everyone knows that before the farmers' suicides, there were very large numbers of weavers' suicides. Like for instance, the famous Pochampalli sari. 72 Pochampalli weavers committed suicide in 91-92. You have a frontline cover story on that. Why did the